In this video, we're going to look at sexuality and sex from the perspective of energy flow, and specifically a couple of the reasons why blocked sexuality can transform into sexual flow and attraction, and vice versa. So the first thing to understand is that we're not having sex as one person, but rather as multiple personas operating within four distinct brains. So we have the reptilian brain, we have the rational brain, which combined leads to the rational reptile. We have the empathic brain, the brain of empathy. This is what differentiates us from a human being rather than a human animal. And then we have the transcendent brain. And all of these are functioning to some degree in parallel within each human being. Now, we're over here in our reptilian, mental, empathic, and transcendent brain, and our partner's over on the other side. Now, each of these brains create flow in different ways. So the reptilian brain, with its fight, flight, freeze protocol, creates flow when someone's running and someone's chasing. So you've got flow there. Less so when there's chasing and chasing, right? So a fight, flight, or a fight, freeze impulse in the reptilian brain. This is dominance and submission, basically. I'm going to prove that I'll win the fight, and you're going to submit to me out of the rationale of power. So sex at that level, reptilian sex, is non-empathic. In fact, empathy blocks reptilian sex. Now, this gets into one of the problems whereby the prostitute or the casual sex becomes more intense than the sex with the partner. Why? Well, if we are primarily located energetically in our reptilian brain, now this can happen due to trauma, due to the state of the culture, etc. But if a lot of our energy, our force, is coming from the reptilian brain, then you've got a dominance-submission type of dynamic. So rape fantasy, for example, literal rape, chasing someone, seducing someone, those types of things where there's a manipulation of energy to express power over. And whether, if you're in a reptilian state in the feminine form, then your arousal comes from imagining someone dominating you, overpowering you, raping you, etc. If you're in a reptilian state in the masculine expression, it's imagining chasing, winning, etc. Now, if someone isn't running away, if they're participating, there's less flow. And so the flow is coming from this dominance submission pattern in the lower brain. So if you are meeting a stranger, if you're having anonymous sex in a bathhouse, if you're having sex with a prostitute, and you're in a reptilian orientation, you may give yourself permission to say, well, That's what a prostitute is for. We're not trying to make love. There's no particular conventions. This is dirty sex, etc. And so there's a strong flow. Now, let's say you decide to marry the prostitute and fall in love with the prostitute. See, now we're moving up into the empathic brain. And the empathic brain, though, has a different coding. You've got the mental and the empathic brain saying, no, you treat a prostitute like this, that's fine. But you treat your wife like this is fine. Or you treat a prostitute like this, but you treat a husband or a father or a mother like this. And so you've got these layers then where suddenly you've got inhibitors on the reptilian flow of energy. Because most people don't say, I'll fall in love deeply with, the woman of my children or the man of my children, and then I will fuck the shit out of them, or I'll do this, It's like, no, I will care for them. But that idea, that empathic idea may not link with where most of the energy is. So the empathic and the idea, the rational brain and the empathic brain are saying, this is how you're supposed to relate to someone you care about. But the energy still resides in a traumatized person, primarily in the reptilian brain, fight, flight, freeze. And so there's now a dissociation between one's sexuality and one's idea of how sexuality should be. Now, the result is obvious. The energy flow goes down, and now there's more. Now the quality of sex goes down, or the energy flow goes down. And so now you have to find, if you want to regain that energy flow, now you've got to find a new prostitute, a new person where it's not sugar-coated with the ideas and ideals of marriage or friendship, etc. And so that's moving from reptilian sex towards empathic sex, where the predominant energy stays in the reptilian brain. There's also then mental sex. Now, mental sex is pattern analyzing. It often can tie in with power, but mental sex, this is someone who can progress my career. Progressing my career is good. I want what is good. And this person wants sex, okay? So those four thoughts, those are rational thoughts, say, okay, it's good to have sex. Or I want to marry someone who is wealthy. I want to marry someone who is powerful. It's good to marry someone wealthy and powerful. And you should have sex with somebody you are married to. Therefore, I want to have sex. Okay, so now we're connecting on the mental level. Now, brains do not always line up. So one person may be connecting as a mental equation of energy flow, whereas someone else is connecting as a guttural or instinctual or reptilian energy flow, where the other person may be connected more empathically. And so it's, some of the suffering that occurs in misaligned expectations, empathic brains tend to expect empathy from their partner. So if they reach out in empathy and are, quote, brutalized from the reptilian brain of the other, who has no value for empathy, then there is a misalignment of the brain. And so the empathy then leads to increased pain. And the increased pain unresolved leads to more dissociation. And so now there's less energy flow. But if the mental brain is connecting, I married you because you meet these lists, well, then life changes. And now you lost all your money. You didn't get reelected. You lost the race. You lost the competition. You didn't get promoted. So now my mental architecture, the same mental architecture that said I'm having sex with you because you meet this, this, and this, now says I shouldn't have sex with you because you don't meet this, this, and this, the same criteria as circumstances have changed. So now you have no more sex, right? There's now the very code that led you into sex says, no, that's not a good idea. And there can also be, on an empathic level. So you connect empathically on an empathic level. You make love by empathizing with each other's feelings, but then one person has a massive influx of pain. So there's a huge spike in pain, which empathically travels across the bridge. And now the other person has a big spike in pain. Now everyone has a pain tolerance. And anything past that pain tolerance leads to dissociation. Now, dissociation could be summed up by saying, I will do whatever it takes to get away from that feeling. And when we can't leave the situation physically and dissociate from a person or a situation, we dissociate from our own body. We shut down in some way. So at a certain point in pain increase, everyone dissociates. And one of the easiest things to do is to dissociate from the person that is associated with the pain. So let's say you're two parents and your child is stillborn or dies, in the hospital or in an auto accident. Well, suddenly both of your pain levels go way up. And you were connecting empathically, meaning through the empathic brain, but the pain is too high to stay in your empathic brain. So you descend into fight, flight, freeze, survive, or dissociated mental brain. Okay, so you've lost access to the basis for your sex. The basis of your energy exchange of empathy is now numb. And so there's no basis to have sex anymore. Or it's now a survival-based pain management, physical release pain management. And so, again, the sexual energy goes down. Or you may also connect through the transcendent brain, the God-goddess archetype within each person, the ideal. So you look across the crowded room, etc. You see this goddess. You see this God figure. You see the projection of perfection. You want to be one with that. You want to be closer to that. And so you reach out in an effort to connect the transcendent brains. And the god or the goddess, the object of projection, fails the test, comes down from their pedestal. And you thought you were connecting with a spiritual teacher, not a narcissistic idiot who doesn't take care of his students or whatever it is. So some piece shatters the pedestal, and so then the sex stops, because there used to be admiration, there used to be flow, so it was a sex of service even, like You who are my ideal. I want to be close to you. I want to serve you in some way, whether it's a man directing that energy towards a woman, or a woman directing that energy to a man, or a woman directing that energy towards a woman, and et cetera, all the different configurations. You used to be the ideal, but now you've shattered the dynamic. Similarly, in the empathic brain, if you're relating on the basis of friendship and wishing the best for one another, and then you discover a betrayal, a lie, and you realize the other person is not putting the friendship first. They're putting expediency or personal gratification or whatever it is first. They're using me. They're not really empathizing. And at that point, the trust is broken. And what is the trust? The trust to empathize, the trust to take the risk to feel what you're feeling and put that as valuable as my own. Because you're only putting what's most valuable to you. You didn't put my feelings at the same priority as your own. In other words, you tricked me. You weren't in the empathic brain. You were in greed and fear. You were down here in the reptilian brain, but you were pretending. You were talking up here. You were down here, but you're talking up here. I was actually up here, and you betrayed my trust. And so I am now going to dissociate from you rather than continue the relationship as acknowledged reptiles. Now, sometimes, and you can have honesty, issues as well, where you pretend that you're up here. So you're all talking about here, but really both of your energy is down here. And so why does that happen? It happens for reasons of shame and punishment. Nobody lies unless they will get punished for telling the truth. And the punishment is often a form of shame. So for example, if you're in a, quote, spiritual circle where reptilian drives, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, please, trauma, those aren't positive things. They're politically incorrect in the New Age circle. And so you instead talk about love and light and, the greatest good for all and world peace. It just doesn't turn you on. It doesn't arouse you because it's a mental thing. It's not actually what connects with most of your energy. And so you can't flow most of your energy out of a mental idea that you don't really connect with. And so you're talking up here. And so if you have, what often happens is two people who seem to align perfectly in their talk don't actually feel any chemistry. And that's because there isn't really any chemistry there, meaning they're just empty words up there. But down here, they reject their own reptilian impulses. They judge them, so now those are numb. When you judge something, you numb and dissociate. You can't flow energy at the same time you're numbing and dissociating. So as soon as you judge your energy as bad and wrong, you can't connect with it, and so you have a problem at that level. So you could let go of the delusion and connect down here, but then you judge and condemn each other. So but that still could be a more real energy. So this is where you kind of have the complaint of the New Age feminist man who gets bypassed for the bad boy. Why? Well, because if the female is in her reptilian brain, then the only thing she's going to respond to is dominance or the chance to dominate. And if her ever so politically correct kind of world peace partner is coming at her through that energy, it just doesn't arouse her because her energy is in the reptilian brain. So one of the problems around sexual versatility can be if we're stuck in one of the brains. We deny the transcendent brain out of fear of the unknown, out of lack of education, etc. So now there isn't the ability for energy to easily flow there because we're in denial, we're repressing it. In the empathic brain, there may be grief, hurt, and sadness, which we don't want to feel. So now we have a block in that brain. In the mental brain, what we think we should do around sex may dissociate from where the sexual energy is. So you look at a teenage girl or a teenage boy, and you feel lust. So that's where your energy is. There's an energy, connecting around. Is it dominance and submission that is the thing? Is it the innocence with dominance that's the attraction? Is it the vitality? There's some energy that wants to flow there, but the mind is saying this is wrong. That's pedophilic behavior. This is wrong, and so now there's a gap between where the energy flows and where the mind says that it should flow. And every cult, every culture has its shoulds. In the 100,000 cultures in human history, some cultures said it was perfectly fine to have open relationships. Some cultures said that the woman needed to do the initiating. Some cultures said that as long as you're of childbearing age. Some cultures said, multiple wives, multiple husbands. In those cases where the cult prescribes something and you're in alignment with the prescription, then there's no problem. You've got flow. But in cases where your energy, where the chemistry just means flow, right? In cases where the energy is going one way, but the cult is going another way with shame and punishment as the undertone, so that if you get caught doing crossing the taboo, now you're in dangerous terrain, then you've got a block in energy there. And if you connect beautifully on the reptilian level of dominance and submission, being taken, taking, fucking, etc. But you start to spend time together. If you start to spend time together and you have any access to your own empathic brain, then you start to have feelings about the other person. They're not just objects to dominate or be dominated by. They are now people. And the more you start to see and understand them, the more empathy you start to feel. But if your own empathic brain is bottled down with sadness and fear, etc., first of all, the energy is going to get more sluggish in that area. But then second of all, you're going to say, this isn't any way to treat my friend. What would be good for my friend, now we have the mental overlay. This is the kind thing to do. This is the right thing to do, says the cult. And so now the energy is, you've got flow down here, but you've got block up here. Now you're in a tug of war with yourself, and the energy is sluggish again. So if you're looking then for peak sexual arousal, now you have to go off and have sex with a stranger, a new stranger who you don't yet have feelings for, until you do have feelings, and then the process continues. So these are some of the ways that, and we're looking at a lot of how sexuality can stop, but let's look at another instance where you have a secret and you feel tight around the secret. Well, the tightness of controlling a secret, nobody's going to find out. I don't want them to find out. This creates, the energy starts to flow towards your partner, and then you bottle it up in this secret with more and more control wrapped around the secret. Now, if you let go of the secret and then redirect that energy back to your partner, wherever it was connected before, now you can have increased sexuality. If, for example, you are highly attracted to numerous members of the opposite sex, and your partner has been judgmental, et cetera, so you've been hiding this fact. And slowly, all the secrets, all the hiding, you felt this towards this person, you flirted with this person, you felt that towards this person, and then all the time you pretended that you had no interest, in other words, in anyone else. So now you've got layers and layers of lies built up as blocks between you and your partner. Well, your partner also has layers and layers of not being willing to see you, because it takes two people to lie. You've got to lie to the other person, and the other person has got to believe your lie. So it's a collaborative effort. If you really do not want to be deceived, if you really want to see yourself and another, the data is right there. It's there statistically. It's there if you looked in this area and this area. So there is a collusion around lying. It's often not a conscious collusion, but it is there nonetheless. And so you've got two lies on both sides. I'm agreeing not to look. I'm agreeing not to ask. And this is a really important, thing that I would just say, that as a general rule, we are a do not ask, do not tell cult. I would say the number of women out of 1,000 that have asked me the relevant questions prior to having sex that would give them any basis for knowing anything is probably zero. In terms of you have a set of projections and assumptions about me, but you haven't looked at this, you haven't asked this, you haven't asked that, you haven't requested this. But you would be surprised if you discovered this, right? Well, no one that I have met is doing a great job in that area. So we have a largely don't ask, don't tell culture, because while in my experience, the women don't ask, when I tell anyway, because I happen to be really focused on this transparency dynamic for maximum flow, if I volunteer the information that I think the woman doesn't want to hear but hasn't asked about and doesn't know because she hasn't asked, often I will be met with more punishment, more withdrawal, more judgment than if I don't tell. So in other words, there's a reward system. Not only is the woman not asking, she's punishing me for telling. Well, the more of these dynamics that build up, the more blocks there are. And so the sexual chemistry may wither under the weight of countless small lies. Well, if you reveal all these lies, I've been looking at your sister like this, I'd never act on it, but I find that teenager really hot. I feel more lust for this person than I do for you most of the time. This is my favorite porn. This is that. I find this really irritating that you do this and that and the other. If I tell all of these things rather than concealing them, then layer by layer, we're lifting the resistance. Now, even though the partner has not asked and consciously doesn't know their responses to all these things, at some level, they're not an idiot. They know at some level what's going on, and they have responses that they haven't delivered because they're not letting themselves know that they know. And so they've got a whole layer over here. Now, as those clear out, you pig, you horrible person, I hate that, and this hurts my feelings, and As that all comes out, on the other side, you may have vitality again. You may have flow. You may have, in exchange, empathically, sociopathically, mentally, you can restore flow. You could say, well, now we know what's really going on, but I still think it's a good idea to stay together. That's flow. Now that I've expressed all of my judgments and fears and stuff, I can open my heart again and I feel love, and there's flow. Now that I've told you the things I feel so guilty and angry about, and express all that, I feel seen, I feel closer to you, and I feel flow. So a lot of the and then there's another kind of element to building tension. You may spend time together and not be really connecting, and create flow consciously by you are directing all your flow in to this love language, maybe gifts or romantic gestures, but the point that the person has a loading dock to receive your love is, down here in words of praise. So I'm going to redirect the same energy that I was flowing to you as gifts and romantic gestures to now praise and in-depth conversation, and suddenly the love is received, and there's a response of integrated body in the form of sex. Hi, I'm Dane Rose. All knowledge begins with a paradigm, and out of that paradigm comes an idea, an awareness that we adopt, reject, or synthesize into something better. It doesn't become wisdom, it doesn't become useful until we take action, until we integrate it into not only our thoughts, but our feelings, our body, our words, and our way of being. For that to occur, we have to move from the passive media paradigm into more active engagement. In the link below, in the More Information section, is an invitation to join a very small, deliberately filtered, high-quality discussion with a group of people who share a common language and want to work with these ideas, with me and with one another, with the sole goal of creating 10 times more sustainable well-being for ourselves and those around us per unit of energy invested. Thank you for watching.